An officer and a spy is set against the backdrop of late 19th century France and intricately weaves the story of the infamous Dreyfus affair, a scandal that epitomized wrongful convictions, espionage, and rampant anti-Semitism. The story kicks off in 1894 when Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a promising Jewish officer in the French army, experiences a harrowing downfall after being publicly disgraced and sentenced to life on Devil's Island, a remote penal colony. Accused of high treason and allegedly passing sensitive military secrets to the German Empire, Dreyfus's conviction hinges on a dubious handwritten note attributed to him. The French military presents secret evidence to the judges which keeps both Dreyfus and his legal defense in the dark, rendering the trial a gross miscarriage of justice influenced by the prevailing anti-Semitic attitudes among military personnel and the public. As Dreyfus is stripped of his rank and uniform amidst the hostile jeers of the crowd, he fervently proclaims his innocence, but his cries fall on deaf ears. In 1895, Colonel Georges Picquart, a respected officer and educator at the French War College, is appointed the head of military intelligence. Initially skeptical of Dreyfus's claims of innocence, Picquart gradually uncovers evidence suggesting that top-secret documents continue to leak to the Germans despite Dreyfus's incarceration. His investigation uncovers Major Ferdinand Valsin Esterhazy, a corrupt officer heavily in debt whose handwriting matches that of the bordereau used to condemn Dreyfus. Unlike Dreyfus, Esterhazy benefits from significant political support and is protected by powerful allies. When Picquart brings his findings to his superiors, they shockingly ignore and suppress the evidence, unwilling to acknowledge the possibility that they have wrongfully convicted an innocent man. Determined to reveal the truth, Picquart advocates for a new trial for Dreyfus. However, instead of pursuing Esterhazy, the military seeks to silence him by assigning him to perilous missions in Tunisia and North Africa. While abroad, Picquart continues to gather evidence and maintains correspondence with his friend and attorney Louis Leblois. Upon his return to Paris, Picquart attempts to compel a re-examination of the case. Yet instead of being heard, he becomes the victim of a smear campaign, being framed for evidence fabrication, leading to his arrest and disgrace, thereby suffering a fate similar to Dreyfus. Simultaneously, Matthew Dreyfus, Alfred's brother, fervently fights to exonerate him. To amplify their struggle, he allies with renowned writer Émile Zola, who boldly utilizes his influence by publishing an open letter titled J'accuse in the newspaper L'Aurore. In this powerful missive, Zola levels serious allegations against the military, exposing their efforts to cover up the truth, forge documents, and deliberately imprison an innocent man. The letter ignites a wave of national outrage, resulting in mass protests and civil unrest across France. In retaliation, the government resorts to legal tactics and charges Zola with libel, ultimately forcing him into exile in England to evade imprisonment. The narrative continues to unfold with growing tension surrounding Dreyfus's case. As public and political dynamics shift, the possibility of a new trial for Dreyfus looms. Esterhazy ultimately attempts to evade justice by fleeing and showcasing the lengths to which the military and government are willing to go to protect their reputation and avoid accountability. The film culminates in a historical reckoning centered on themes of truth, justice, and the staggering cost of prejudice in a society steeped in discrimination. Through its portrayal of Picquart's relentless pursuit of justice and Dreyfus's tragic plight, an officer and a spy not only recounts a significant chapter in French history but also highlights the urgent moral questions surrounding honor, integrity, and the fight against systemic injustice. The Dreyfus affair resonates beyond its time, serving as a reminder of the enduring struggle for truth in the face of relentless denial and societal prejudice. Under mounting public pressure, the French government agrees to hold a second trial for Captain Alfred Dreyfus, who had been wrongfully convicted of treason. However, the military protects Major Ferdinand Valsin Esterhazy, the true culprit, acquitting him in what is later revealed to be a staged trial. Despite the overwhelming evidence demonstrating his innocence, Dreyfus is again found guilty, though this time his punishment is reduced to 10 years in prison. The ongoing injustice shocks the world and fuels escalating public outrage. Colonel Henry's confession and the turning point. As the Dreyfus affair gains more attention, Colonel Hubert Henry, a key figure behind the fabrication of the evidence used to convict Dreyfus, ultimately confesses to his involvement in the scandal. Consumed by guilt and fear of retribution, he chooses to end his life by committing suicide in his prison cell. Henry's confession creates a turning point. The government can no longer sidestep the truth about what transpired. In 1899, Dreyfus is granted a pardon, but he remains officially guilty in the eyes of the law. Now a free man, Dreyfus grapples with a challenging decision: to continue his fight for full exoneration or to move on from the painful past. He decides to accept the pardon, all while the stain of guilt officially lingers. Final victory: Dreyfus's exoneration. After years of struggle, in 1906, Dreyfus's relentless pursuit of justice finally pays off when a new court officially exonerates him, restoring his good name. He returns to the French army reinstated with the rank of major. Simultaneously, Colonel Picquart, who had risked his career and personal freedom in the name of justice, also sees his position restored, eventually rising to the role of Minister of War. The film concludes with a poignant reunion between Dreyfus and Picquart, symbolizing the end of their arduous 12-year battle for truth and justice. Conclusion: An Officer and a Spy serves as a gripping historical thriller that narrates the deeply troubling saga of a man's fight against systemic corruption and prejudice. It illustrates the potency of truth, warns of the perils of nationalism, and highlights the personal costs of standing up for justice. By the conclusion of the Dreyfus affair, France finds itself sharply divided. Yet the case stands as a stark reminder of the risks associated with blind loyalty, discrimination, and military secrecy. The story begins in 1894 against a backdrop of political and military strife in France, centering on Captain Alfred Dreyfus, an accomplished officer of Jewish descent who faces public humiliation during a military degradation ceremony. Before a hostile crowd, Dreyfus is stripped of his rank and uniform, his sword shattered, and his insignia ripped away. Convicted of high treason, he is sentenced to life imprisonment in the brutal conditions of a remote penal colony on Devil's Island, situated off the coast of French Guiana. Dreyfus steadfastly maintains his innocence, yet the military establishment and general public label him a traitor. At the War Ministry, Colonel Georges Picquart is appointed to lead the military intelligence division known as the Statistics Section. Initially, Picquart holds no sympathy for Dreyfus, standing alongside many of his fellow officers who believe the captain's conviction was justified. However, upon taking command, Picquart uncovers new intelligence suggesting that military secrets continue to leak even after Dreyfus was incarcerated. This prompts him to probe further into the suspicious activities of Major Esterhazy, who is later determined to be guilty of the crimes attributed to Dreyfus. Picquart's investigations reveal that Esterhazy's handwriting matches the infamous bordereau document used against Dreyfus. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Picquart seeks to present his findings to his superiors, hoping they will rectify the situation. His efforts are thwarted, however, as military leaders, including Generals Gaunt and Boisdeffre, are unwilling to risk the army's reputation by acknowledging a wrongful conviction. Thus they refuse to reopen the case, intensifying the conflict that ultimately defines the Dreyfus affair. As Picquart relentlessly pursues the truth, he increasingly becomes a significant threat to the establishment. To neutralize him, the army transfers him to Tunisia, where they assign him perilous tasks, including combat missions seemingly aimed at ensuring his quiet elimination. Nevertheless, Picquart perseveres, sending letters and evidence to trustworthy contacts in Paris. Upon his return, he takes legal action in hopes of instigating an investigation into the injustices at play. However, his initiatives draw the ire of the military, leading to his arrest and imprisonment under accusations of leaking military secrets. In parallel, Matthew Dreyfus, Alfred's devoted brother, remains undeterred in his quest for justice. He reaches out to prominent figures for assistance, including the renowned writer and journalist Émile Zola. Zola responds to the situation dramatically by penning the open letter J'accuse, published in the newspaper L'Aurore. In this audacious piece, Zola directly charges the French military and government with orchestrating a massive cover-up. The impact of the letter reverberates throughout the nation, inciting riots and protests in response to the revelations. Instead of addressing the claims, the government counters by charging Zola with libel, forcing him into exile in England to evade imprisonment. Faced with mounting public pressure, the French government reluctantly consents to a new trial. However, what unfolds is a travesty of justice. Colonel Esterhazy, a key perpetrator in the case, is acquitted, while Dreyfus is once again found guilty, albeit with a reduced sentence of 10 years. Though the military and nationalist factions revel in their perceived victory, public outrage intensifies, highlighting the deep divisions within society. Amidst these events, Colonel Henry, a major figure behind the fabrication of evidence against Dreyfus, ultimately confesses to the forgery of crucial documents. Overcome by guilt and the specter of exposure, Henry takes his own life in his cell, a startling admission that shatters the military's credibility. This confession forces the government's hand, leading to a pardon for Dreyfus. After enduring years of solitary confinement and suffering, Dreyfus accepts the pardon. However, his acceptance does little to clear his name, as he remains legally viewed as guilty. Nevertheless, his supporters refuse to let the matter rest, persistently advocating for his full exoneration. In 1906, following a prolonged and arduous legal battle, Dreyfus achieves official exoneration and is reinstated in the French army, now as a major. Meanwhile, Picquart, who devoted his life, career, and reputation to uncovering the truth, is also reinstated and ascends to the position of Minister of War. The film culminates in a poignant reunion between Dreyfus and Picquart, both finally vindicated after a grueling 12-year struggle. The Dreyfus affair endures as one of the most pivotal political and legal scandals in French history, laying bare the perils of institutional corruption, rampant nationalism, and entrenched prejudice within society. The tale serves as a testament to the resilience of those who dare to challenge established norms and fight for justice, echoing the importance of integrity and truth in the face of overwhelming adversity. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.